Sometimes the most beautiful light cannot recognize its own glow. Have you ever noticed how the sun never questions its brightness, yet you, infinitely more complex and luminous, doubt the very radiance that others see in you daily? This phenomenon, where we become the harshest critics of our own reflection, creates a curious paradox. Those who possess true beauty often remain blind to it. Your eyes have become so accustomed to your features that you've forgotten how to see yourself as others do. Through the lens of first impression, struck by the constellation of qualities that make you uniquely captivating. If you find value in these reflections on self-perception, consider subscribing to continue our journey of inner discovery together. The art student stood before her canvas, paintbrush suspended mid-air, hesitating. Just as she deliberated each brushstroke with painful scrutiny, she approached her self-image with the same unforgiving eye. Each morning, she would take countless selfies only to delete them all, convinced none captured her essence correctly. Her phone gallery, a graveyard of discarded self-portraits. Yet when the museum curator first encountered her at the exhibition, he was immediately drawn to her presence, something she remained oblivious to as she nervously discussed her artwork. This disconnect between how we perceive ourselves and how the world perceives us creates a fascinating blind spot in human consciousness. You scrutinize your reflection with microscopic precision, cataloging every perceived flaw, while others see you in motion, laughing, thinking, creating, a dynamic tapestry of expression that transcends the static image you obsess over. Have you ever returned to photographs from years past and thought, "I look so much better than I realized at the time"? This revelation isn't coincidental. It's the first sign that you're more attractive than your current self-assessment suggests. When you look at older images, you view them with greater objectivity, stripped of the hypercritical lens you apply to your current appearance. The person in those photos, the one you now recognize as attractive, is still you, just captured at a different moment in time. This pattern reveals something profound about self-perception. Your critical eye is not a reliable compass. It's calibrated to find fault, to compare, to reject, never to appreciate the wholeness of your presence. Like the art student scrutinizing her selfies, you've developed a contracted relationship with your image, rather than one of expansive acceptance. The wisdom of Shaolin teachings reminds us that true vision requires stepping outside the prison of habitual perception. When you remain locked in patterns of self-criticism, you create the first hindrance to self-mastery. Sensual desire, in this case, the craving for an idealized version of yourself that prevents you from seeing your authentic beauty. Consider how others respond to you. Have you noticed people sometimes becoming inexplicably nervous or awkward in your presence? The second sign of your unacknowledged attractiveness lies in these subtle behavioral shifts. When someone stumbles over their words, fidgets with their clothing, or maintains prolonged eye contact before quickly looking away, these aren't random occurrences, but subconscious responses to your attractiveness. The universe speaks to you through these ripples of interaction. Just as water responds to the presence of an object by creating waves, people respond to your energy with these micro-adjustments in behavior. Their nervousness is not a rejection, but rather an acknowledgement of your impact, an impact you've likely dismissed or misinterpreted. In the stillness of honest reflection, can you recall moments when conversations shifted upon your arrival? When someone's composed demeanor suddenly became flustered? These reactions unveil a truth about your presence that your self-criticism has kept hidden from you. The third sign manifests in the digital realm, where our modern selves exist as extensions of our physical presence. After posting a photograph, perhaps one you were hesitant to share, have you experienced an unexpected surge of messages, comments, or friend requests? This digital cascade represents a collective recognition of something you've overlooked in yourself. Like the art student who couldn't see the beauty in her selfies, you might attribute this response to good lighting, fortunate timing, or mere coincidence. Yet consider the possibility that others are responding to something authentic and magnetic about you, something that transcends filters and careful angles. The integration of your physical and digital presence creates a mirror that reflects back not just your appearance, but your essence. When others respond positively to this reflection, they're acknowledging the entirety of who you are, not just the surface elements you scrutinize so harshly. The fourth sign reveals itself in public spaces, where the anonymous gaze of strangers offers perhaps the most objective assessment. Have you caught people looking at you across rooms, in cafes, on public transportation, not with judgment, but with interest? These lingering glances aren't accidental. They're acknowledgements of your presence. The Shaolin teaching of awareness applies profoundly here. Just as a warrior develops sensitivity to their surroundings, you might notice these subtle signals if you cultivate attention to the present moment. These glances represent moments of genuine human connection, fleeting recognitions of your intrinsic value that occur before social filters can intervene. The art student experienced this when visitors at her exhibition would watch her from across the gallery, something her friends noticed while she remained focused on adjusting her displays. This awareness gap between how others perceive us and how we perceive ourselves creates the space where self-doubt flourishes. What would change if you allowed yourself to trust these external signals rather than dismissing them? How might your relationship with yourself transform if you accepted that others see beauty in you that you've trained yourself to overlook? The fifth sign operates through absence rather than presence. The curious case of missing compliments when you've made special effort with your appearance. This paradox occurs because others assume you're already aware of your attractiveness or are accustomed to praise. They might think, she must hear how beautiful she is all the time, and thus withhold the very affirmation you're seeking. This assumption creates a silence that you misinterpret as confirmation of your inadequacy, when in fact it speaks to others' perception of your confidence. They see you as someone who doesn't need external validation, an assessment that may seem incomprehensible from within your self-critical perspective. The museum curator never complimented the art student's appearance directly, assuming she must know how striking she was. Instead, he focused on her work, leaving her to wonder if her presence had registered at all. This misalignment of perception and communication creates unnecessary doubt where appreciation actually exists. Body language reveals the sixth sign through the subtle choreography of human interaction. Have you noticed friends or colleagues mirroring your gestures, leaning toward you when you speak, or maintaining increased eye contact? These unconscious movements represent what behavioral scientists call rapport building, physical manifestations of connection and attraction. When others mirror you, they're not merely copying your movements, they're signaling resonance with your energy. This mirroring occurs beyond conscious awareness, making it one of the most reliable indicators of genuine attraction. Unlike words, which can be carefully controlled, body language often reveals what remains unspoken. The final sign emerges in group contexts, where social dynamics place each person in relation to others. Are you frequently chosen for photographs, positioned centrally in groups, or selected to represent teams or organizations? This pattern of spotlight placement isn't random, but reflects a collective recognition of your presence. Like the art student unexpectedly asked to speak about her work at the opening night, you may find yourself selected for visibility in ways that puzzle you but make perfect sense to others. These selections represent a form of social consensus about your impact, a consensus that may contradict your internal narrative. What creates this profound disconnect between self-perception and reality? The answer lies partly in what Shaolin philosophy identifies as the 5 hindrances to clear, seeing sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and skeptical doubt. Your relationship with your appearance may be clouded by several of these hindrances. Sensual desire manifests as craving for an idealized version of yourself, constantly comparing your reflection to impossible standards. Ill will appears as harsh self-criticism, the internal voice that finds fault in even your most beautiful features. Sloth emerges as resignation, the belief that your appearance is fixed and unchangeable. Restlessness shows up as constant dissatisfaction, the feeling that no matter how you look, it's never quite right. Finally, Skeptical doubt undermines positive feedback, questioning compliments and dismissing admiration as mere politeness. These hindrances create a veil between you and reality, distorting your self-perception into something that barely resembles how others experience you. But just as the art student eventually learned to see herself through the curator's perspective, recognizing the impact of her presence that had been there all along, you too can cultivate clearer vision. The Shaolin approach to self-mastery offers the RAIN method as a pathway to clarity. Recognize your patterns of self-criticism. Accept that these patterns exist without judgment. Investigate their origins with curiosity rather than shame. And practice non-identification, understanding that these critical thoughts are not your essence, but merely habitual mental patterns. When you apply this method to your self-perception, something remarkable happens. The gap between how you see yourself and how others see you begins to narrow. You start recognizing the signs of your attractiveness not as flukes or misinterpretations, but as accurate reflections of your impact. Remember that attractiveness transcends conventional beauty. It encompasses your energy, your authenticity, your way of moving through the world. These qualities cannot be captured in a mirror or selfie, but are precisely what others respond to when they're drawn to your presence. Ask yourself, what would change if you trusted the evidence of your attractiveness that surrounds you daily? How might you move differently through the world if you believed in your impact? What possibilities might open if you released the contracted state of self-criticism and embraced the expansive reality of how others experience you? The art student's transformation began when she stopped deleting her selfies and started seeing them through the curator's eyes, not with vanity, but with recognition of her authentic presence. Similarly, your journey towards self-mastery includes learning to see yourself clearly, beyond the distortions of habitual criticism. This clarity isn't achieved through affirmations or positive thinking alone, but through the rigorous practice of awareness, observing the signs around you, noticing others' responses, and challenging your interpretive filters. Just as a Shaolin practitioner develops awareness through consistent training, you cultivate clearer self-perception through persistent attention to reality, rather than your critical narratives. Take a moment now to consider, which of these 7 signs have appeared in your life? How have you dismissed or misinterpreted them? What patterns of self-criticism have prevented you from seeing yourself clearly? Imagine viewing yourself through the eyes of someone who admires you, a friend, partner, mentor, or even a stranger who's been moved by your presence. What would they notice about you that you've overlooked? What qualities would they appreciate that you've taken for granted? Now bring this awareness into your daily life. The next time you catch a glimpse of your reflection, practice seeing yourself with the freshness of first impression rather than the staleness of habitual criticism. When you receive compliments or notice admiring glances, resist the urge to dismiss them. Instead, allow them to inform your self-perception, creating a more accurate and compassionate view of yourself. The journey towards self-mastery includes not just improving yourself, but seeing yourself truthfully, recognizing your impact, honoring your presence, and accepting the reality of your attractiveness. This clarity becomes the foundation for authentic confidence, not built on comparison or vanity, but on honest recognition of your inherent value. Like the art student who eventually understood her impact on others, you too can bridge the gap between self-perception and reality. The signs of your attractiveness are already there, in the nervous smiles of new acquaintances, in the lingering glances of strangers, in the digital responses to your images, in the body language of friends, in the spaces you're chosen to occupy. These signs aren't coincidences, but consistent patterns revealing a truth you've been trained to overlook. By recognizing these patterns, you free yourself from the prison of self-criticism and step into the reality of your impact. This shift represents not vanity, but clarity, the essential foundation for authentic living and genuine connection with others. If this perspective has offered you a new way of seeing yourself, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from the same insight. True wisdom grows when it passes from one person to another, creating ripples of clarity in our collective consciousness. See you next time. Keep your eyes open, your mind curious, and your spirit evolving.